Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Stiff Upper Lip podcast. We're up to, episode 4 of the 5th season? It might be a little bit more of a slightly lower key episode, considering that I've just gotten back from Manchester, and it sounds like everyone's just sort of like having a nice little day. Joining, as usual, is Max and Ed. How are you both? Max, you first.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, afternoon everyone, how are we doing? Another week, I think a classic of a week this week, probably like the season came to life a little bit, like, you know, when you have the World Cup and you have like that one day of the World Cup where it's like, you're flying after that. There's a great red zone. And looking forward to talking about some games. Not as much as we did last week, but we'll hit the key points, don't worry.
Yeah, we did seem to spend about 40 minutes on games last week, and
That Lions Seahawks one, just interminable.
Yeah. And Ed, how are you doing? How's your weekend going? Is everything hunky dory in the Wilkins household?
Yeah, all is good in the hood. As Max said, it was a great week of football. It was a great week of ball, man, and I'm just looking forward to shooting the breeze with you two.
There we go. All right, we're gonna talk about 2 games, and then we've got another little segment as part of our new traditions. Where we're going to talk about the teams that need to start freaking the fuck out post haste. I think Max called it "Abandon Ship" as the segment, so that's what we're going to roll with here in week 3 of the season. Week 3, is that what we're up to? It's a very
abandon ship or stay the course.
There you go. Where we're going to look at some of the teams that are with losing records, mostly focusing on those with 0-3 records, but also some of those with 1-2 as well, that might be a little bit more on the interesting side. But we may as well start with a pair of those teams that we might end up covering. Well, we are definitely going to cover later on, and that is the Minnesota Vikings and the LA Chargers, who played out a 28-24 win for the Chargers, who nearly charged it, but then somehow managed to find a way through. Big quarterback duel on the box score, especially. Justin Herbert, 40 of 47, 405 yards and 3 touchdowns. Keenan Allen with a big game as well for the Chargers, with 18 catches, 215 yards, and also had a passing touchdown as well. He outpassed most of a Justin Fields or 3.5 quarters of a Zach Wilson game. So good job, Keenan Allen. You are now the 31st best quarterback in the NFL right now, shall we say? But yes, and that loss also puts the Vikings to 0-3 on the year. And Ed, would you like to take the lead on this game? Because it was blocked out for me on DAZN.
I can do, yeah. It was a bit of a slugfest. You know, players were sort of coming in and leaving, and like the big thing to say is that Mike Williams went off with. I mean, have we heard on it what kind of an injury is? It looked like a nasty one, like potentially an ACL. But yeah, it was one of those games where, to use Max's metric of if you played this game 100 times, what would be the outcome? I think if you played this game 100 times, 100 games would be this nail biting close to the end, as both teams, you know, just did their usual thing. In the end, it came down to a pass on 4th and 6 at the 6-yard line. So, you know, it was one of those where it could absolutely have gone either way. And the Vikings are now looking at 0-3. Chargers are looking a little bit brighter on a 1-2. But I suppose we'll discuss that a little bit more later. The game itself, it was kind of one of those matches where you sort of thought anything could happen. And both QBs put on a display. You know, it was a real air show. But both defenses sort of put in a performance to forget as well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
fair
That's my
think
enough.
analysis.
I was going to say that when you look at the box score, there's some eye-popping numbers. I think both teams were moving it up and down with ease between the 20s, but then in the red zone it got a bit more sluggish, and that's kind of how you lose these close games, just not being efficient. I think the Vikings had something like, what was it, like 450 odd yards of offense. Justin Herbert completed 40 of his 47 attempts, 405 yards and 3 touchdowns, but they can't run the ball at all without Austin Eckler, which is again how you just race up and down the field all the time and then end up eventually with a 28-24 game. I think the Vikings kind of bungled the end of the game. If anyone who's seen it, they convert a first down inside the red zone. 35 seconds left. They spend 23. They don't huddle up, but they don't get up to the line either. They just sort of all stand around. I think a play's coming in. And then by the time they snap it, it was 12 seconds, and it's just like a crazy pinball interception because it's the 2023 Vikings. And I think that just about summed it up. It's just neither of these teams really can put it away. They put themselves into positions, but they've not been able to put it away so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, one narrative that sorry, Tom, that I forgot to
No,
mention
go on.
is that the Vikings lost their 8th fumble of the game, and it should have been 9th as well, with a Madison one that was overturned on a real sort of a real questionable decision from the coaches the refs in Minnesota's favor. But even more than the fact that they've now fumbled 8 times in 3 games, which marries up with their last season, they fumbled 5 times in the red zone, which is absolutely wild, and that is a way to lose games no matter who you play.
Yeah, that was the sort of point that I was like slowly starting to get my head in towards, is the real story of the 2023 Minnesota Vikings is ball security, because it cost them big against the Eagles with like the Justin Jefferson fumble through the end zone being like basically the most important play of the whole game. It cost them against the Bucks, and it's cost them again here. Like they seem to be really struggling to hold on to the football as a whole this year, and I don't really know how you'd like go about fixing that, because it's even some of your most dependable players. Like I know that you mentioned like Alexander Mattison had the fumble that was overturned, but like there's guys like Hawkinson and Jefferson who are also just like unable to keep hold of the ball at various points of the game. And I know that Jefferson didn't have any fumbles this time, but like I mentioned, like he had the big one last week, and it just feels like the luck factor has to be there when it comes to whether or not your team can hold on to the ball in that sort of fashion. And like obviously you can teach technique all you want, but like this is a team that didn't really have any of those sorts of issues. I can't remember last year. It felt like they were sort of playing relatively good football for the most part. Like they just couldn't defend very well, and now all of a sudden here they are like struggling to hold on to the game in matchups that really they like should be looking at. I mean, like you say with the Chargers, they can't run the football in any way, and the Vikings did such a great job of like holding up like Joshua Kelly to just a bizarre box score of 11 carries and 12 yards. As a team, they had 30 total rushing yards, and it's like that feels like you've got a sort of recipe for success a little bit there. But yeah, man, those fumbles and interceptions are just not a good way. That's how you lose these sorts of games, and it's showing with the Vikings being at 0-3. Anything else, or?
Yeah, nothing to add. I suppose we might cover it in more detail in a bit.
Yeah, that is true. Max, have you got anything, or shall we turn our attention to the other game that we want to talk about today?
No, it's just funny. Only the Chargers could win this way, and only the Vikings could lose it, and vice versa.
Yeah, that is true. All right, we'll turn our attention then to the Arizona Cardinals, and over in the desert, they get the win 28-16 against the Dallas Cowboys, who looked pretty pretty good, to be honest, through the first 2 weeks, the Cowboys, and I was thinking that the Cardinals would be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And then here we are celebrating a Josh Dobbs masterclass of a sort of performance. 17 of 21, 189 yards passing with 55 on the ground on 6 carries as well. Had a touchdown. Rondale Moore with the big play as well, with a nice rushing touchdown going 54 on 3 carries. Quite a lot of carries from Rondale Moore out the backfield, you know. And then James Conner as well, 98 yards, 14 carries and a touchdown. Overall, a very nice game from the Arizona Cardinals. But how about them Cowboys?
That was a funny
Wild,
one.
isn't it?
It was a funny
Sorry,
one.
Max, you go.
No, I was gonna say the Cowboys shot themselves in the foot a few times, but ultimately, I think when we're looking at the Cardinals, maybe I'll say this for later. Actually, I was gonna say, just an overview of their season, but in terms of just this game, they actually outplayed the Cowboys for large stretches, and they had some early plays which really set the tone. Josh Dobbs had a 44-yard scramble down the sideline, I think, on the first drive, and that, as you say, they had the Rondale Moore long rushing touchdown, and they just seemed to, at least at the start of the game, just impose their will a little bit on the Cowboys. And you know me, I've got this this working theory that Micah Parsons starts every season hot and then disappears. He wasn't. I don't know if he had. Maybe he had a sack in this game, but they had him well in hand.
Yeah,
Josh Dobbs is just a professional.
He did have a sack because he started doing this like celebration where he sort of crawls along like an American XL bully.
Oh, nice.
Very, very topical at the moment. Yeah, vicious.
Josh Dobbs is a professional. He's won a lot of hearts. I don't really know how much I can say, but that wouldn't be talking about whether you want to jump ship on the Cardinals. But they deserved the win, and the Cowboys looked pretty dominant after 2 hours. The Cardinals probably should have won last week as well. So yeah, times for them in the desert.
How much do you
It's a
reckon?
weird one, isn't it? I think.
Oh, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think that they're do we have to sort of eat a little bit of crow here and give Jonathan Gannon his due? Because he's a weird guy, but I suppose it's kind of hard to mastermind a victory over these Cowboys, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a really good point, especially with I'm getting, obviously it won't be to the same level of success, but because I do think that there's like a wide talent difference between the name that I'm about to mention and this like Jonathan Gannon Cardinals team. But it feels a little bit like when we all sort of had to like slightly eat humble pie a bit with Nick Sirianni, we thought, oh man, this guy is a fucking loser. This guy stinks.
He's out of his depth.
He's the Jim Tom Sula of this like year. They're gonna be really bad. Like there's nothing that's gonna overturn it. And then like the team looks frisky and they get some great performances out of like guys that maybe hadn't shown all that much, like how Jalen Hurts hadn't shown huge masses before, like Sirianni, and now, yeah, Josh Dobbs. I don't think I'd be. I don't. When I was watching Josh Dobbs play backup snaps as a Steeler, I didn't think that I'd be sitting here in the year 2023, not only talking about Josh Dobbs being a starter in the NFL, but also being like actually just quite good to watch. Like he's making the right throws, he's making the right reads, he's keeping the ball nicely held, and like you said, like they started out with a field goal early in the game, and it was all because of a long scramble down the left side by Josh Dobbs. Maybe old John Gannon's finally going to get a little bit of credit here. I mean,
Respect around here.
Yeah, a little bit of gusto from the cognoscente.
Well, let's not let the old Cowboys off the hook, because they did ultimately blow a game to a team who let 20-odd point lead go to the Danny Dimes Giants last week. And they never got going. It was a series of costly mistakes throughout this game. They were just out of rhythm the whole time, and I just wonder whether, obviously, it's happened since we last recorded, but the Trayvon Diggs torn ACL in training. I just wonder whether that had them rattled a bit coming into this game, because the defense giving up 28 points to the Cardinals. That's not what we were anticipating.
Yeah,
Even then, their MO is stopping the run, isn't it? Like,
James
Odigizua
Conner
was one of the best players in football the first couple of games, but yeah, they just allowed everything this time.
Yeah,
James Conner was really the reason that the Cardinals won. Dobbs had a very nice mistake-free game, but Conner give them some pop.
Yeah, but I think as well, like, part of the reason as to why Connor had the success is that, like, the Cowboys got burned by the Josh Dobbs runs a couple times. Like, they bit too hard inside, and they have a real issue, really, when it comes to stopping the run from quarterbacks. I know that they seem to struggle a little bit to, like, hold dimes, like, off the ground most of the time. Like, they can beat him in the air comfortably, but, like, if he actually decides to turn it upfield, and, like, same with Jalen Hurts, it feels like they sort of get beat a bit by when he decides to take off. I'm not saying that it's something to keep an eye on or anything, but, like, it doesn't really surprise me that, like, a team with a mobile quarterback figured out how to, like, move the ball on this team, and then when they started playing to try and limit the outside zone runs from the quarterback, like, all of a sudden James Conner's finding big success in the middle and whatnot. They schemed a really good game, did the Cardinals. Like, they just, like you say, they just outplayed the Cowboys. Outcoached them, outplayed them, outfought them.
Is Dan Quinn still the Cowboys DC?
Yeah.
That might be telling then, because Dan Quinn's just favors zone all the time. Perhaps if they're not putting a spy on the QB, that's a bit of a blueprint for how to beat them then.
Yeah, it's a good job that they're not in a division that has Jalen Hurts, and I know that they beat the ever-living piss out of the Giants, so, you know, it doesn't matter, but, like, it's a good job that they're not going to be coming up against Jalen Hurts, and
I don't know if I would, like, if we're not going to talk about the Cowboys later, but I wouldn't freak out if I was them. It's one of those things in sports where, you know, a team who are clearly superior just complacent coming into a game. They never get the wake-up call. They never get it going. I think Giants had that last week, and they got it going with a long bomb pass early in the second half to Jalen Hyatt, and that just set them off for the second half. In this game, the Cowboys had a long Turpin punt return down to like the edge of the red zone. In the third quarter, got called back for a holding. It was like a 60-something yard penalty.
yeah,
And they just never. That basically summed up. They never got off the mat. Lucky.
Yeah, I think as well, it's one of those things where, I mean, like you say, there was that very long penalty, but you can sort of see where certain games are going to go, and sometimes when it comes to penalty yards, you can really tell. They had 13 penalties for a total of 107 yards, and like you say, that huge one on the punt return, like, maybe they get that punt return and get into the red zone to sort of start. It was like midway through the third quarter, right? And that's like the point where they take a field goal instead of, like, off of a fairly long drive instead of a touchdown, and, you know, maybe if they get that touchdown, they find a way to get back up off the mat. But yeah, just a weird bad game from the Cowboys. America's team. I should have played the soundbite. Never mind. Anyway, that's us for the games. There were more games that were apparently good. I missed them, but you should check them out. There's also a couple being played tonight. The Eagles at the Buccaneers and the Rams at the Bengals as of time of recording. We still don't know whether or not Joe Burrow's meant to be playing.
Sounds like he's trending towards playing.
Is he? Okay. So if he is playing, then cool. That might be a good game, but I don't know whether or not I'd trust it. Like,
we're not doing predictions here, but I think
we're not doing it.
I think that the Rams have sort of overperformed their talent the first 2 games, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Is there anyone there?
Yes, what do you see?
Iceberg, right ahead!
Thank you.
All right, it is time, our men, to abandon ship. Which team should start freaking the fuck out post haste? We have 12 that we're going to talk about. We're not going to talk about everybody that's got a losing record because that is kind of boring. Some of them are not important and probably don't need to freak out. But the ones that do, here they are. And we're going to start with Max taking out the New York Giants. Max, 1 and 2.
Taking them out, shooting them behind the woodshed. No. I wouldn't say it's that bad. The Giants left port and immediately had like a armory level explosion amidships against the Cowboys. The fire was burning strongly, but they managed to put it out against the Cardinals in the second half. Then in the Niners, against the Niners in prime time, it's like the Sharks were circling. Can they fix the ship and get back on track? Yes, I think they can. I don't know what the Giants fans were really expecting from this year, because I would say the consensus is that people are expecting them to regress, which I think they will do. If Giants fans are expecting them to be a playoff contender again, they'll be there or thereabouts, but I don't think they're going to be taken seriously. They're really going to limp to the end of the season, probably be decommissioned and floated and turned into a artificial coral reef bed. Yeah, for me, I think they can get the ship back on track and make it to the end of the year, but it's going to be something like 8 and 9. Barkley injury is really concerning, but I think that what will help them get there is their defense will improve. They showed too much last year for me to think that they would be a really bad defense. So the Giants, I would say, it's going to be a rough ride. You're not going to humiliate yourselves, but don't schedule in any big end of season parties.
It does feel a little bit like at least one team from the NFC East every year for like the last 10 has like really limped into a playoff berth. Especially that one year where they were all like trending towards an 8-8 at best. Just a real funny division. I could see that though. They could still just find their way into 8 and 9 and still win a playoff game. It's just how it is sometimes. All right, Ed, do you want to take a look at the 1 and 2 Tennessee Titans?
I sure do. Yeah, I think with this team, it's kind of all about the captain going down with the ship, because I think that with Derrick Henry, they have an identity. Without Derrick Henry, they're nothing. And I think the sort of the worry is that they were trying to flog him in the off season, and then they've suddenly turned around and go, "Oh no, actually, you're really the only part of our offense that clicks with Ryan Tannehill." So it shows a lack of foresight. You can't really a dodgy spyglass or whatever to use the extended metaphor. But yeah, this team feels like the defense is on its way out and the offense is not on its way in. Does that make sense? Like, should you abandon ship on the Titans? Yes. Strip this team for parts. I don't care if you're going to be competitive in the AFC. Like, are you gonna make a deep playoff run with this team? No. I mean, you've probably got all the tools to sort of like, if you decide that Malik Willis or Will Levis is your QB of the future, because you've got both of them in the building, then the sun might be setting on the Derrick Henry Titans experience, if not mid this season, then certainly at the end of it. So they're going to be a much less fun team to watch this year. Just jump ship and just follow a team that's more interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, when do you think we're going to start hearing calls for Will Levis? Because he was taken in the top of the second round, I think, very high in the second round. Ryan Tannehill was awful week 1, good week 2, awful week 3. Yeah, and as you say about the captain going down with the ship, if we're saying Tannehill's the captain, he's stood in waist deep water at the moment, and he's got a bucket in hand, but his bailing isn't top class at the moment. He's looking a bit aged.
This is the thing, like, this team they're not going to win now. They're not going to do anything in the postseason because they just haven't got the talent. But the problem is they've got some decent pieces that they can potentially flog for the future. It makes sense to tear this one down.
Yeah. Okay.
Abandon ship then.
Yeah.
Abandon that ship.
Yeah. Okay, it's me now, and I've got the snake bitten bit of their own accord. 0-3 Denver Broncos, and I think if we'd have done this last week, maybe I'd have been sort of more like, they're showing a little bit of promise, and like I believe in their defense to like hold up a little bit better. They just ran into Sam Howell getting very frisky, and like Russell Wilson just failed to move the ball after a certain bit, but he looked better. And then the Dolphins hung a near NFL record points total on them, 70-20, in Miami. I think that this is just one of those teams where it genuinely doesn't matter like any of the talent names that they've got, because again, like if you look through their team, you'd sort of think this isn't a team that should be blown out 70-20 on the road in Miami. Like I know that Miami are looking very good right now, and at some point down the line we'll be talking about them more in depth because we're sort of hovering around the bottom at the moment. But this loss feels like the exact sort of game where a giant iceberg underneath the surface has shattered open the main 45 layers of the hull, and now it's just leaking kerosene into the Atlantic Ocean. This is a Titanic team, and Sean Payton is one of the violinists who is about to fall to his death by clunking off of the the exhaust chimney on top of the ship. This team stinks. Abandon ship. Get gone.
Yeah, it's almost hard to quantify in nautical terms what just happened to the Broncos. The closest thing I could say is, and we're sort of in the area geographically in Miami, they just went into the Bermuda Triangle and they came out without souls. Like they went in limping and their systems were on the fritz, and they came out just like the table's set, dinner's on the table, but no one's eating it. It's stone cold. And I guess the dinner in this case is Russell Wilson's Subway order?
Yeah. Honestly, like, we've got a Bears-Broncos game next week, everybody. Like, this could be a shit show. This could really be a real shit show of a game next week.
Talk about ships passing in the night.
Oh.
I guess they're colliding in this. It's confusing, man. I'm not from a nautical background.
Okay.
I mean, one point on that, if I can. Like, the Cortland Sutton receiving game was the best, probably, receiving game we've seen from a Broncos player in about 2 years, and they lost again. They still lost the game by 50 points.
Yeah, he was a big part of it as well, because he would make a good catch and then fumble the ball in a crucial spot and put the Dolphins right on the goal line with one of them. Like, just a real messy game. Like, I was actually putting it in the chat. Like, Russell Wilson, I feel like, had probably his best game as a Bronco to date. Like, he looked a lot better, and then it'd get to the Dolphins side of things, and Tua would be finding Tyreek Hill wide open, and the Broncos would have zero blitzed and put one deep high safety, and they'd have given Tyreek Hill 40 yards of open field to run into, and because he's the fastest man alive, like, that's just a win. Just one quick thing about the Tyreek Hill thing is I quite enjoyed his celebration. I don't know if anybody saw it, of him going into the crowd and like just jumping with his hands up and down. Like, he just went into the crowd, didn't like do anything like brash or anything, just like put the ball down gently and then just started jumping around with the fans. Very, very comical, but yeah,
we need to be careful with this territory though, because Tyreek Hill has already had some problems down by the waterside this season.
Ow, banged in a big spot. All right, Max, we go to the 1-2 New York Jets. You picking New York media teams here?
Oh yeah, because I'm like down the bodega, chopped cheese, whatever. Actually, there is an extremely pertinent nautical topic to describe the New York Jets, which is mutiny. That is what is going to happen to the New York Jets in prime time against the Chiefs if they persist with Zach Wilson and all of their young stud players on both sides of the ball have to sit out and get humiliated because the guy literally is the worst quarterback in the league right now, not named Justin Fields. And even Justin Fields, you have reason to hope. He has, these absurd talents at other things. Zach Wilson is just... Bob Saller's out there saying he's, the best option that we've got for winning. And I think there's some speculation as to whether he means, they won't go out and get another guy. It's an untenable situation, and something's going to have to break. Obviously, your captain goes down moments into your voyage. The vice captain comes in, and he is like a comedic level idiot. He's like slipping all over the decking. He can't grip the wheels because his hands have got too much grease on them. It's just a mess, and the crew is getting ill-mannered. They need to make a change at captain, which is to say quarterback, or their ship is going to, just start going around in circles in the Pacific while Zach Wilson is just released on a desert island. He's given like a hat and just left there at Point Nemo.
Point Nemo. Anything else on the Jets?
No, it's just the vice captain's in control and he's not.
Okay. Moving on to the team that beat them, 15-10. The New England Patriots, which moving on, sorry, first of all, to the 1-2 Jacksonville Jaguars. Sorry, Ed, stepped on your toes there a little bit.
That's all right. It's all right, Thomas.
Yeah, take us home.
Exactly, taking us home is exactly what the Jets need to do. The Jags need to stay the course. There is no sense panicking when an ill wind has blown you slightly off course. You just need to wait for a clear night sky where you get your sextant out and look up into the sky and plot a new course. Get your sextant out.
Yeah, if you insist, mate.
There is nothing whatsoever sexual about, astroneering. And then I think that, every team is going to come up on a game where they're shorthanded and they lose a game they're expected to win. There's a reason why there's only one team ever that's gone undefeated. Like, should the Jags have been in a close game with the Texans? No. I think we all understand that, and I think they need to look at themselves. But I see no reason to panic. Like, they've got a strong offense and a solid defense. No need to panic. Stay the course.
I would agree, although I don't think the ship is all it was hyped up to be shortly before release. I think they're having some issues in the boiler room. Just technical glitches. Whether they can get it back on track, we will see. But I do agree that there's no need to just turn around and go back to the port. you can try and run some running repairs and try and get this not on track, on course. Get back on course, and just be a bit wary because the Colts, who we're not talking about, are in the not the rear view mirror. I don't know what ships have. They're off the. You know what I mean.
The aft.
Yes, the Colts are steaming up the aft.
Oh, glorious.
Sorry for
that. Moving on.
Surely.
Okay. The 1-2 New England Patriots. I'm going to say that this is absolutely not a freak the fuck out situation. I think that the only reason as to why they're 1-2 is they ran up against the Eagles and the Dolphins. The Eagles, who were in the Super Bowl last year, and maybe on another day the Patriots actually win that game with how it ends up playing out in the sort of late stages. And then the Dolphins again, like, they just put up 70 points on a Broncos team. Like, they're fine. The Patriots then get a win against the Jets. I know that it was like a very low scoring game, but I'm not prepared to freak out on the on the Patriots. They are showing that they are at least competitive with some of these much better teams, and they're beating the teams that are far worse than them as well. And it may be like Zach Wilson was bad, but the rest of the Jets feel like a good team. Like, they have good pieces around, so only being able to put up 15 points against the Jets is like fine almost. I'm prepared to say that this Patriots team is going to be a-okay. They're not going to make the playoffs, unfortunately, because like the AFC is that stacked. But it's not like a freaking out sort of situation. They just need to, help Mac Jones develop just a bit more. Just trust some guys.
Yeah, it's a bit like, it's not unlike the Giants situation that I had first overall, to be honest. It's a stay the course, but it's going to be potentially a bit of a mediocre voyage.
Yeah.
Well, this
sort
is,
of like a P&O.
This is the thing. I mean, if they are stuck in the doldrums.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's
not
if they are stuck in the doldrums, though.
They go into the Isle of Man, the Isle of Wight, or any isle.
The Emerald Isle. What's
the benefit to winning if you're not winning it all in this league?
And this is coming from you, Ed.
That's not my opinion at all.
I was about to say
Sometimes
this
it's
is
more about.
That is not my opinion at all.
It's all about the voyage and not the port of call.
All right, moving quickly on to the 1-2 LA Chargers, Max.
Yeah, this is a difficult one. I don't really know what you guys think. I think the Chargers, even though they won and they got off the mat against the Vikings, marginally, as we said, they did suffer some serious issues. Mike Williams has been confirmed. It's a torn ACL. His season's over. Obviously, Eckler has struggled to stay healthy. Derwin James went off to get an MRI. It's the same old with the Chargers, and it's just like, do you know what? Do you know what ship the Chargers are like? It's like the ship of Theseus. You change out all the parts, and it's still the same ship, and it still can't put away the voyage at the end of the day when you're right next to the port. It crashes into the harbour wall every time. Justin Herbert's, he's trying to hammer all these boards back in, trying to stop all the water coming in. I just starting to get the feeling that Brandon Staley's handing him, sub-quality wood panels. And, it's balsa wood. It's leaking in really fast. For me, Herbert is doing his best to save a sinking ship. I'm tempted to say abandoned ship for the Chargers, but I'm not hopeful that it won't just happen the exact same way with another ship.
Yeah, that's entirely fair enough. Like, some teams are just like a cursed franchise. It's sort of the same way that like people, but it's where most like sporting superstitions come from. Like, the only reason why things like the Billy Goat curse and things like that exist, and like the
Colonel's curse.
What?
Colonel's curse.
Yeah, like things like that. The only reason why, however, most of the things exist is because like franchises that have these sorts of issues are just almost like why even bother trying? Because you know that it's going to end up the exact same way, and they've got maybe one of the they do have one of the most elite passers in the NFL right now, and they just can't make it work to win games. And they'll probably beat the Raiders coming up, and it'll be fine. But then they're on the bye week, and they're probably quite glad that they'll be on the bye week, because then they'll have the Cowboys and Chiefs, and it's just like, oh, what?
It's like taking the engine out of an oil supertanker and putting it in a barge, like a canal boat.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that sounds like it would rip up and down the waterways of your nation of choice.
Nice. Sorry. Okay. Ed, the 1 and 2 Cardinals. I know that we spoke about them a little bit earlier on with the Cowboys Cardinals game. Fresh off a win. What are you saying?
Another nautical term here, I think, comes into play. Marooning. Maroon Kyler Murray. It's clear that at this point that, his future doesn't lie with the team. And then sail off into the sunset and are never seen again is, I think, the way to go with this.
You think so? Because I kind of think if the Cardinals are 2-2 or 1-3 and they put up some more fight in their next game, I'm not too sure it's against, but I think they've outperformed probably the expectations even within their own building. And I don't think that their initial plan would be to just suck and have Kyler Murray be traded and use that first round pick on a quarterback. But if they're not looking like they're going to be right down there with the basement boys, do they still go ahead with that plan? Or do they try and reintegrate Kyler into a team that has shown something so far?
I think I don't think there's anything more that can be done to reintegrate Kyler. Like, what have they? The back office has already showed like such little faith in him with his contract and stuff. I think that it's just at this point, it's a house divided or a ship divided, and I just think it's better to. Well, yeah, I think it's better to sink it for the insurance money.
I don't. I'm a lot more conflicted with the Cardinals than I thought I was going to be, if I'm honest. I feel the same way about the Colts with Jonathan Taylor.
Talent will come to the fore, and the Colts are the most. The Cardinals are the most talent poor team in football.
Talent will come to the fore, and everything else to the aft.
All right. Next is myself with the Minnesota Vikings, who are 0-3 at the moment, and I feel like we could just sort of take nearly everything that we've just sort of said about the Chargers, how like they have this premier talent who's just trying to make it work by sticking boards in wherever he can in the form of Justin Jefferson instead of Justin Herbert, and it doesn't really matter because this team as a whole is just sort of kind of cursed to never be able to break over the sort of hump, shall we say, but to use a more sort of nautical term, or a term with more nautical origin, the Vikings are currently towing the line of exactly what I was expecting would happen, but purely out of a weird, like, oh, this would be funny situation where they are losing nearly every one-score game that they're playing at the moment. I don't think that they should exactly like freak out, but I do think that if they aren't gonna make use of the situation that they're in, and I know that they have Kirk Cousins on an expiring soon contract. I'm not exactly sure if this is his last year or whatnot, but they need to make...
It is his last year.
Okay, then in which case they need to make their decision at some point in the next couple weeks as to whether or not they're going to figure it out, because being at 0-3, and in a division with the 2-1 Lions. And I'm not saying, obviously it's a different beast, but it's not very often that an 0-3 team makes the playoffs. And even then, quite a lot of those times it's because everybody else in their division is not very good. They need to figure it out. I wouldn't say that it's the example of like abandoning the ship, but I do think that it's sort of, let's try and figure out how we can steer this on course, because it's not on fire, it's not leaking, but it is drifting horribly into the middle of pirate country is where it's going. It is sailing very close to the shores of Somalia, and now we need to figure out how we can get back away from impending doom that is right around the corner, is where I'd sort of say about this Vikings team. Because I think that they do have the ability to turn it around. They've shown that they are at least good enough, but man, stop fumbling the ball. That's it. Hold on to your doubloons next time, guys. Hold them on. Hold them tight. You don't need to throw them overboard. Anybody else with any viewpoint on that front?
No, it is a tricky one. It's a very tricky one. I would say to the Vikings, abandon ship, because I don't think this iteration of the Vikings is going anywhere this season. I would get everyone you need. Get Jordan Addison, get Justin Jefferson, get Darisaw, whoever. Put them in a big old lifeboat and sail to shining shores. With Shedeur Sanders.
Oh.
By that.
Oh, hey, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a spicy one there. Shedeur Sanders. All right. Max, it's background with you with the 0-3 Carolina Panthers.
Panthers are the most boring ship in the marina. I don't really know what to say about them, to be honest. They're just talent poor. Which is to say they're the foot pounds of torque.
They're a schooner.
No, they're like the steamboat paddler serenely drifting down the Mississippi with nobody on board except for like a couple of raccoons. Bryce Young has been brought in, didn't play in this game, didn't really impress that much in the first two games. I just don't really care. They can abandon ship, they can stay on course, but at the moment, is there anything about the Panthers on a game-to-game basis that is really worth watching? Is there any reason to buy your tickets, walk down the gangway and get on board with this lot? I just don't see it. I mean,
So
I guess
what is that? Is that are we staying the course or are we abandoning ship?
I just don't care. I really don't care.
Okay.
Brian
okay,
Burns
so
is like, it's like being on a really boring cruise, but then there's one half decent magician show, one of the nights of the cruise, and it's like a 6-month cruise, like an NFL season, and that's Brian Burns.
Okay, so if we boil the whole thing down to abandoning ship is trading Brian Burns, and staying the course is maintaining Brian Burns, should the Panthers?
Now, that's an interesting question.
I quite like the vision, by the way, of saying that like Brian Burns is the one half decent entertainer on this 6-month cruise, because there's also the knowledge that about 8 weeks into this cruise, the half decent entertainer will be so furious about being held captive on this ship that he's like screaming and banging on like every door in the ship imaginable and causing a real scene to try and get himself out of there, and they just simply
Funniest
won't
part
let
is
him go.
if they trade him but he doesn't make a ruckus, then the metaphor becomes really funny, because you just wake up on the ship and they're like, there's another ship next to it and you're like, just chuck you onto the other one. If that's what it boils down to, I would say He must be coming up to. I don't know if he's on his second contract. I would say abandon ship. Trade him to. Do you know what? The Rams will probably still give you 2 firsts for him. I would take that every day of the week because you need help in every single. You need help on every single floor of this ship on every deck. So, and get it, please.
Do you know which team I could see really making a play for Brian Burns? And I was like,
yes.
What?
The Chiefs.
It wasn't the Chiefs.
Vikings.
I'm not sure. It was either the Vikings or I think that the Saints will be throwing whatever they can to get him, because they obviously know all about him and whatnot. Like he's played them twice a year his whole career.
Yeah.
I was really thinking like Dennis Allen. I feel like is missing a true premier pass rusher, and I feel like getting a Brian Burns into that building feels like it makes sense in my head.
Yeah.
Would they do it though? Would they trade to a team in the conference?
I don't think that they've got a real choice. Like, I think they'll just take anything that they can fucking get their hands on when it comes to like, if the Saints throw enough at them, they're sort of just gonna have to accept it. Like, they stink.
Yeah.
And it's not like they've got like any reason to have any sort of faith. They've got Bryce Young and they're just refusing to give him like any help in any way. So why not get him some help? Sure, you're going to be losing Brian Burns, but if the Saints throw enough at you, which historically they have done in certain cases, maybe, maybe. I know that if you were on the P&O cruise and you looked over and saw heading adjacent to you that entertainer looking a lot more happy, but on what's a rival cruise liner? Like a
you see him firing a cannon at your ship. You're not going to be like delighted.
No, I suppose not. But at the same time, like you did get enough money to keep your staff afloat, and so you don't have to fire them over Zoom.
In my mind, the Saints boat equivalent is like a German U-boat.
Like a Bismarck.
Yeah, exactly.
Bismarck wasn't a U-boat. Come on, man.
Oh, sorry.
Nah, never mind. We'll get into it later.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's my Roman Empire.
Okay. Ed, you have the Chicago Bears, who are 0-3 and coming off of a 41-10 loss at Arrowhead. But it didn't really matter where they were playing because a 41-10 loss would have happened anywhere at the moment.
Yeah, it's ponderous, and the crazy part is that we have to have a conversation about this team sinking or swimming, because Matt Eberflus has done very little, has hired, his coaching hires haven't gone down that well. It all reeks of desperation at this point. Like, I'm more of a fan of Justin Fields than you two, and I feel like the Justin Fields experiment is on shaky ground simply because of his lack of improvement as a passer. Yeah, turbulent sea is fine. Shaky sea. I just think that they've just finished tearing it down, and they've got very little to show for it, which is perhaps the worst place to be.
Yeah, it's one thing where if you abandon ship and you come away from it with, like, when the Bengals sort of abandoned ship a little bit and they, like, had one of the most talent-poor teams in the division, but then they came away with, like, Joe Burrow. You feel like you've earned something by tearing it down. The Bears, I don't feel like have anything of note. Like, they've made bad trades with the capital that they've earned from tearing it down in the first place. They are a team that is well and truly... wait, let me just make sure that I'm getting this nautical term correct. They are currently Jetsam.
Oh, Jetsam.
Jetsam.
Oh, I should have said Jetsam for the Jets.
Oh, no. Yeah, they fucking stink. They are so bad.
It's hard to imagine I think the closest nautical metaphor I come up with would be, you know, the Mary Rose, the famous ship launched by Henry VIII. It was like the flagship of the English Navy. And
Yep.
it was launched from Portsmouth with all manner of aplomb and fanfare, and then it was overloaded on one side, immediately rolled over and sank, and almost everyone on board died. It's kind of, without the death, of course, it's kind of what happened to the Bears. A lot of aplomb, but the weight on this team is all in the wrong parts. You know, guards, the offline ball linebackers, it didn't really make any sense to do that, and they've rolled over. And in 500 years' time, they'll find this 2023 Bear season at the bottom of the sea. They'll bring it back up and they'll put it in a museum and be like, "This is just about as bad as it gets."
Nice.
Yep.
All right, sweet. And finally, played most recently. Played on the Sunday night game. The 1-2 Las Vegas Raiders. They were beaten 23-18 by the Steelers. When it comes to blowing this team up, again, like, the problem with teams in the AFC West is, like, even though the Chiefs before this Bears game, they were sort of looking like they were sort of there for the taking, and like at any time, like the Chargers or maybe the Broncos or the Raiders could have all overcome the Chiefs in some capacity. Like, you felt like there was a certain element of real potential there. Now all of a sudden, like, everyone in the AFC West is just like completely on notice that there's no division winning playoff spot for them again for the 8th year in a row or whatever. There's very little chance of any of them winning a wild card or like getting into the wild card round at the moment, unless like you're the Chargers. The Raiders' one win came against the Broncos, which I guess like keeps them off of the foot of the division, but like at this point you might as well finish last and get the easier schedule next year, because like neither of those teams are good. The Raiders were just like bad yesterday, like last night. They were just like a bad team. I know that it says 23-18 on the box score, but like it really wasn't. Like, the Steelers, who'd been stuck in a mire the first 2 weeks because they'd played like great defenses or whatever, were 23-7 up on the Raiders, and they'd gone two and a third quarters without giving up a point. And it was like the Raiders just couldn't get out of their own way. Jimmy Garoppolo throwing like bad interceptions or like getting stuffed at the goal line on like crucial plays. Like they just aren't a functional team. It's sort of hard to really judge how the offense is gonna look against other teams, because like they played the Broncos, but like when everyone sort of like had a little bit more hope that maybe the Broncos defense was good, and like they played the Bills and got just blown out immediately, so there was just sort of no point. And then they played the Steelers, and like the Steelers defense is good. So it's like, what are we expecting out of the Raiders? I'd honestly say blow it up, and it's only because like you still have the pieces to be able to do so. Because you don't want to hold it too long, is my only point. Like, you've got Josh Jacobs, who you can trade, and I know that he was like actively pushing for it. What?
They can't trade Josh Jacobs. He's a free agent at the end of the year.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking about this as you were talking. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, it's fine.
I'm sorry, but I was thinking about this. Like, who of the Raiders team has any value in a trade?
Devontae Adams. One of the...
And?
I mean, that is it.
Max Crosby.
Like, oh yeah, Max Crosby as well, but I just don't see that being a thing. But
Devontae Adams did not sound happy in his interview yesterday. He said, he basically said they need to get a move on because he's not getting any younger.
Yeah.
It's almost like he got traded to a team to be with his college QB, and who then immediately was shipped away.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it was. I mean, it was slightly doomed from the start. I wonder. It would be fun. Maybe we can do an episode in the future about closer to the trading, closer to the trade deadlines, about some fun, landing spots for some of these players, because Devon's head would be a really interesting one to think about where he could end up.
Yeah.
No, because you just know it'd be the Chiefs.
Oh my god, I don't want to think about it, bro.
uh,
How about the Chargers?
hey, now then.
Well, I like Devontae. I wouldn't want that to happen to him.
Well, yeah, fair. Yeah, like, what? Maybe when we see the Raiders play against like the Chargers next week, because the Chargers defense is like weird. Maybe it'll be like a different story, but it just doesn't seem to get any easier for them. Like they could easily go 1-5. Like looking at this schedule, I know that like I'm sort of projecting that the Patriots and Packers will be like better, but like every time that they've run up against like any team that's either got an offense or a defense, they've been bad. And like the only time that they've been like reasonable in terms of getting anything was a 17-16 win against the currently 0-3 and clearly terrible Broncos. Like they're just not a good team. They're just not a well put together franchise. Really poorly organized. They just don't have any pop. They're just not.
They don't have enough cash as an organization to fire Josh McDaniels this year, allegedly.
Oh my god!
Which doesn't have enough. We don't have enough torpedo tubes to.
Yeah, their offensive line did not hold up as well, by the way, at all in the game against the Steelers. That's a bit of a concern for me. With like, Josh Jacobs had -9 yards last week against the Bills, and then like Jimmy Garoppolo was sacked 4 times by the Steelers. I know again, like the Steelers will generate pressure, but like there was one in particular where like Keanu Benton, Jimmy Garoppolo genuinely
he came shot out of a cannon.
Oh man, like Garoppolo gets hold of the snap, and before he's even had the opportunity to like flick the ball in the hand in the play to like realize where he's meant to go with it, Keanu Benton's already round his knees because like the center and the left guard just had absolutely no idea what was going to happen. Like that's a 300-pound guy, and he's just like getting through the line. They're just a bad team. They just aren't good.
Three picks for Garoppolo, and McDaniel's embarrassing decision to kick a field goal at the end of the game is just not good. I'd want to see they. I know that Ed's got a hard out, so I don't want to get too far into this, but I think right now the Steelers are, at this point in the season, are kind of like that team where if you play mistake-free and you're not awful and not a really bad team, you'll certainly be in the game at the end and have a good chance of winning. But if you shoot yourself in the foot at the moment, that's just gonna do you in, and I think that was kind of the case in this game as well.
Yeah, the Raiders definitely
last week the Steelers had the same thing, right?
Yeah. The Raiders definitely shot themselves in the foot. Like the picks that Garoppolo threw, like one of them was a good jump by Levi Wallace, but the other two were just horrendous overthrows. Like Patrick Peterson having a pick, but like the receiver wasn't even close, and then the game sealing one from Levi Wallace again. Like he just overthrows his guys too often. Like it almost feels like he's like pigeon-toed and doesn't really have the right footwork to make some of these throws. And apparently, like I was sort of pinpointing it that he'd only passed his medical with the Raiders because like they were just desperate to get anyone in. But like apparently he's still been dealing with like foot issues, Jimmy Garoppolo. It kind of doesn't surprise me. Like I know that he had 324 yards, but again, like almost all of that was in garbage time. Like, or not garbage time, but like the Steelers were playing prevent defense for like 10 minutes in the fourth quarter, and like maybe they shouldn't have been, but like the Raiders just didn't move the ball before then. Like they had the opening drive touchdown, and that was it. They couldn't move. They just had nothing really. So yeah, just a Rough team. Anyway, we got through that fairly
Well,
quickly,
let's see.
guys. Good job. Yeah, good
Let's
job.
see.
We'll be back next week, hopefully with some more games to talk about. Hopefully there's some spicy things. We've also got our rookie run through, which at the moment is trending to be a pretty interesting one. So make sure that you come back next week. Any closing statements from either of you guys at all?
Yeah, man. Jordan Love is going to the Hall of Fame.
Ed?
I'm just gonna let the silence speak for itself on that one.
Okay. That's fair.
Let's do some soothing ocean noises to see us out. Hole breach! Hole breach! Hole breach!
This is not a drill.